everybody. Welcome to Injustice for All, episode 29. Yes, and I have the episode right. So this is episode 29. Hi, Judge.
Hello there.
So I want to start off talking about Jimmy Kimmel because that's basically breaking news. He technically got fired, and I want to play this clip.
Technically, he's still receiving his check, but he got indefinitely suspended.
Yeah,
There is a difference.
So Jimmy Kimmel pulled from air in 32 ABC markets after comments on Kirk. Charlie Kirk. Next Star Media Group will remove Jimmy Kimmel Live from its 32 ABC stations, preempting the show indefinitely after Kimmel's remarks on Charlie Kirk's assassination. Nexstar owns or operates 200 plus stations across 116 U.S. markets, meaning Kimmel is now blacked out in major cities like Nashville, Salt Lake City, New Orleans, Richmond, Knoxville, Albany, Secaucus, Syracuse, and Harrisburg. Nexstar released a statement saying Mr. Kimmell's comments are offensive and insensitive. We've made the difficult decision to preempt his show. Nexstar released a statement saying Mr. Kimmell's comments are offensive and insensitive. We've made the difficult decision to preempt his show in an effort to let cooler heads prevail. And this is what he said.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
All right. And that was his remarks.
Also, there is additional stuff out there about the problem was he badmouthed one of the FCC commissioners. So anyway, I'll let them work that out. And this is something that started about 5 years ago when the Biden-Harris administration started cracking down on so-called hate speech. As I remarked at the time, it sounds good to certain people when you start saying, we need to cut down on all this hate being pervaded out there. Well, there's a weird thing about hate speech. It quickly morphs into something that's being used against those who thought it would protect them. So it's a restriction on free speech. I am unalterably against any form, shape, or fashion of speech restriction because the best way to deal with offensive speech is to counter it.
Well, Pam Bondi, she sat down for an interview to discuss, basically her plans to curtail hate speech.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle. There's free speech and then there's hate speech.
So she's willing to target people who's using hate speech. And
I've seen it done and it doesn't work well. it causes all kinds of travesties, and it has some very nasty consequences, and the precedents that it sets are very bad. In American law, from the very first case the U.S. Supreme Court resolved, said the law is based on tradition, precedent, and the evolving conditions of society. And when you set these kind of precedents, you set some very dangerous traps for the unwary. With respect, I think she's been doing a pretty good job, but in this I disagree. So that's free speech. Now, the problem is one person's free speech becomes another person's hate speech, becomes another person's righteous indignation, becomes somebody else's speaking out as is absolutely necessary. So what happens is that you allow whatever regime is in charge to interlineate its biases, prejudices, preconceptions, and sense of purpose and agenda for what we have had as classic free speech. And that is dangerous because some administrations are okay. I like the current one on balance right now. I think it's done some things that are very necessary for the good of the republic. And it's correcting some very bad habits and some sloth and dependencies that have been set up that are very harmful to our system. But again, nobody's perfect. So I think it'll iron itself out. And Bondi has been subject to criticism from both the far left, far right, and in the middle. So I am informed that she's listening. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and here's a tweet or a post that Charlie Kirk a year ago posted saying hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. So there you have it. And I just don't.
Here's the thing about that. You can't falsely yell fire in a crowded theater, which would cause pandemonium and likely a hazard to those people who are attempting to escape. You can't use fighting words. You can utter them, but if you utter them and the predicted result occurs, then you are on your own. And fighting words have been held throughout American history as those things that are reasonably likely to provoke an ordinary and reasonable person into direct physical combat if they are uttered. So that is something that takes you outside of the protection of free speech, fighting words, and then when you falsely and falsely means not just ignorantly or negligently yell fire, but you do it intentionally just because you want to see what the sensation is going to produce, then you are outside of the bounds and of protection that free speech would ordinarily give you. Now, anything else, you can call somebody an SOB all you want to. You may be subject to a civil action for defamation of character to keep that person from being so enraged that they go get a pistol or a sword and come after you and breach the public peace in order to get redress. In other words, set up the cause for a duel, which itself is illegal these days, though it at one time was not. And some of our presidents and highest officials in the land in American history have been found to have engaged in duels, and that gets rather interesting. Harry Truman went over and tried to kick in the door of a critic who had some negative things to say about one of his daughters, and he was loudly yelling he was going to kick his ass if he'd come out, son of a bitch, I'm out here, come on out like a man. Secret Service didn't stop him, and that ranges back to Andrew Jackson having had some phrase wherein people died because they mentioned that his wife was a divorcee when he married her, and that was a horrible thing back when. We even had one president who was much against a certain person appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court on a homicide conviction. So when the Supreme Court affirmed rather his conviction, this acting president met him outside of the Supreme Court building and shot him in the head with a muzzle loading pistol to carry out the execution to make sure it was no longer delayed. So we've had all sorts of things going on in the White House and around and about the country from lesser levels that have dealt with free speech. So it's dangerous, but in my opinion, for what it's worth, under free speech provisos, is that it works itself out better when you allow it rather than when you restrict it.
So, because even if you call somebody nigger, if you call somebody spick, if you call somebody I forgot anti-Jewish. I know they have some anti-Jewish names, or wigger, that's like a white person, or peckerwood. Any derogatory name you call somebody, that person can charges. You can't bring charges against that person because that falls under the First Amendment. But like,
well, you can if you say one of the gay words, the F word or stuff like that. I'm aware of a situation in California where somebody's son, now 50, well, mid 40s, bought himself a nice home in West LA. He didn't realize the componentry of the neighborhood was essentially rainbow, and they approached him about putting a rainbow flag on his front porch. He refused, so they started bringing their pet dogs around to defecate on his yard, which is illegal, and they didn't pick it up, which is illegal under the county ordinances. And finally, he took to starting to video record this. So one day they brought a particularly large dog up on his front porch and had the dog defecate. He yelled out of his window while he was recording this. There was an exchange of words. They called him the N word. He called them the F word. They rushed down to West LA PD precinct and they swore out a warrant against him. I looked at the transcript of the trial proceedings. The judge acknowledged that the complainants did in fact call him the N-word several times, observed that his own people frequently used the N-word, but said that wasn't protected, but the F word was, so he was found guilty, sentenced to 30 days in the LA County Jail. That was suspended. He was placed on 11 months and 29 days probation. He had to pay a $2,500 fine, supervision fees, and it's 10 sensitivity classes that cost him almost $5,000, and had to do 250 hours of community service. So that's because he exercised his free speech, which in the environment in concern, West LA, California, he said was hate speech, but the N-word wasn't considered hate speech because it wasn't designated as such in the California statute. So he had this onerous situation. And since it was a domestic situation and he was found guilty of it, he, under California law, was prohibited from exercising his Second Amendment rights to be armed. So it has a cascading effect, but I always use that as a classic example of what's wrong with hate speech.
Okay. What we are seeing from the White House is each party is blaming the right, blaming the left. And I want to play this clip of J.D. Vance blaming the far left, right? And then I want to play a clip from Obama.
You talk to the shooter's mother, you talk to the shooter's father, you talk to the local district attorney, you talk to the FBI director or the deputy director of the FBI. You look at every ounce of evidence that we have, and it is clear. This is a person who grew up in a pretty normal family, actually had a pretty good home life, who was radicalized by the far left, by the social networks of the far left, by the ideas of the far left, and got so far down the path of radicalization that he killed my friend. That is not a both sides problem. My friend is dead because of left-wing political radicalization. And if you want to cut that out, then be honest about it and look yourself in the mirror. You talk to the shooter's mother, you talk to the shooter's father.
And this is a clip of Obama blaming the far right.
Regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, what happened to Charlie Kirk was horrific and a tragedy. But I will say that those extreme views were not in my White House. When we have the weight of the United States government behind extremist views, we've got a problem. Regardless of where you are on the political spectrum.
Science. I didn't do too badly in it. It actually was a minor that became a major due to certain circumstances. But what both sides are doing is as taught and studied in political science. And that is, what you do is take advantage of immediate circumstances to turn them to your political or philosophical gain. So what we have, interestingly enough, is a long-term, well, about a decade-long habit of the far left of trying to cause a ramp up in emotionalism within certain susceptible portions of the American public. So they are very emotively destabilized by the idea of certain things being done. And as Gloria Zerfine, who is the editor of Pace magazine, published in Inglewood, California, who's from Memphis and is a friend of mine, she puts it that what you had was the development of a super Jerry Falwell with Kirk, and he was on his way to having this kind of voice in certain communities. They cut it off, but the reasons they cut it off is because they didn't cut it off. It got cut off because of the buildup of animosities in a group that had been specifically targeted with propaganda that would inflame their emotions so that their victimhood would dictate that you've got nothing to lose. You might as well do something because your entities, I'm trying to think of the right word here, the entities that you think are making you a victim are going to get you anyway, so you might as well go out because life is not worth living. By the way, that's one of the things that you have to do to turn crime around, is to get the crime perpetrators, not victims, to start thinking that they do have meaning to their lives and purpose to their lives and existences, and they stop being the kind of random, spontaneous criminal elements that they are that causes such problems. So it's bad when you get someone to think they have no purpose and they have no cause, and then you give them a violent purpose, which is it's up to you to become the martyr, which is crazy because you're not, you're the perp, and take this enemy of other people like you who have been victimized out. And that's been the underlying cast of what we get from the far left. You are a victim. You're entitled to be made whole. You don't have to work. We should take care of you, which provokes and promotes a dependency that we can use so we can control what you do and what you think. And it's a very negative thing.
And what about the far right?
Far right tends to be at least privy to what they are dealing with. They study what the left is saying. They understand the points and they try to counter the points. The far right tends to be a group that has no problem with peaceful men being men who are capable of violence when necessary. I have that in my opening paragraph on my X page, which is you have to be men of public peace, dignity, and order, but you have to be brave and courageous when violence is necessary and know when that is appropriate. There are righteous wars. There is self-defense. There is defense of third parties. These things require sometimes that violence be met with violence. That's why the United States has a Department of Defense. That's why Russia, that's why China, that's why North Korea, that's why England, France, Germany, they all have defense industries, and they have tanks, planes, ships, submarines, missiles, and small arms to go deal with the circumstances that sometimes arise when the most violent creature on the planet gets violent with itself.
So speaking of the right left, yesterday Kash Patel had to sit in front of Congressional committee. I guess they pulled him back in front of a judiciary committee to talk about what he's not doing right as FBI director. But I want to play a couple of clips because he handled himself well. And I just want to play a couple of clips and get your thoughts on it.
I don't think you're fit to hand the bureau, but here's the thing, Mr. Patel. I think you're not going to be around long. I think this might be your last oversight hearing. Because as much as you supplicate yourself to the will of Donald Trump and not the Constitution of the United States of America, Donald Trump has shown us in his first term and in this term, he is not loyal to people like you. He will cut you loose. This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this, I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job of defending this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to say anything?
Yes, sir. That rant of false information does not bring this country together. If you want to work on bringing this country, it's my time, not yours.
My God.
If you want to talk about
dividing this country,
it is my time.
I follow you on your social media posts that tears this country apart.
To address your falsehoods.
Oh, you can try all you want
in this country.
To not take responsibility for what you have said. Sir, you're making a mockery of this committee. Sir, you don't tell me my time is over. The people of New Jersey tell me what my time is. You can't lecture me.
You can tell me my time's over.
You may be the charge of the FBI,
not going anywhere.
but I am not afraid of you.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm not afraid of you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Senator Booker, I announced at the beginning of this meeting that this back and forth talking over each other doesn't work. And I said, if that happened, I asked Patel not to respond, and I was going to give him some time after the senator's time was up to respond. And he has the privilege to do that uninterrupted.
Mr. Chairman, one point of
order.
order.
Go ahead, Mr.
I've
Patel.
watched him talk over us, and you've never once criticized him for us not even being able to get our questions out.
Well,
he has been rude and disrespectful to senator after senator.
And when
move on to my, you've been asked some questions about changes to your hiring standard, and including college degrees and possibly the age. But one question I had is, that you are now requiring applicants to be able to do a certain kind of pull-ups, which a lot of women cannot because of physiological differences. Are you requiring these kinds of pull-ups?
We are requiring a physical program at BFTC at Quantico because FBI agents carrying guns in the field have to chase down bad guys and do really hard work. The physical fitness standards of those agents
So
are
are
being
you requiring
appropriately
these
assessed.
kinds of pull-ups?
We are requiring everybody to pass the 1811 standards at BFTC. If you want to chase down a bad guy
Excuse me.
and put
the
him in
reason I
handcuffs, you
ask-
better be able to do a pull-up.
The reason I ask is that there are concerns about whether or not being able to do these kinds of harsh pull-ups is really required of FBI agents.
Doing
Anyway,
one pull-up
Mr.
is not
Patel,
harsh,
I
and there are
am
always
greatly
medical
concerned.
exemptions to that.
I'm going to move on
Good
to my...
answer. Good answer. See, there's a difference between trying to get a quota and be fair in employment. If the job requires certain physical parameters, then everybody needs to be able to meet the minimum physical requirements. That's like saying, I want to be a pilot, but I can't get my vision corrected past 2010. Then you don't need to be a pilot in the U.S. Air Force, Navy, or Marine Corps.
Yeah. I'm going to play
See, it's just the way it goes. Well, it discriminates against this category. So what? I mean, reality is reality. At least nowadays, with the deficient eyesight, there is no large predator out there anxiously awaiting his opportunity to not so subtly sneak up on you to have you for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or a midnight snack.
Yeah. And this is my favorite clip here. And this is the last clip.
The American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No. I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of
you're
inmates.
not in the weeds?
What I am doing is protecting this country, providing historic reform, and combating the weaponization of intelligence by the likes of you. And we have countlessly proven you to be a liar in Russiagate, in January 6th. You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised that you continue to lie from your perch and put on a show so you can go raise money for your charade. You are a political buffoon at best.
Well, you can take an internet troll.
Take it to the bank that the FBI is protecting this country and the state and citizens of California. We are bringing historic reform. Point of order. But all you care about is a child sex predator that was prosecuted by a prior administration, and the Obama Justice Department and the Biden Justice Department did squat. And what did President Trump do? Bring new charges courageously. And what have we done?
Chairman,
you said I'm the most transparent FBI director in history. 33,000 pages of information to you. I challenge you to say anything credibly to the truth. Go ahead and run to the cameras where you want to go now.
You be quiet.
Love it. Love it. This sissified crew of jackasses, that is what the emblem for the Democratic Party is, isn't it? A jackass. This sissified rainbow cult cadre of jackasses is doing exactly what we have been talking about. They are inflaming things by making calculated misstatements to get a rise out of the emotions of the ignorant and the ill-advised and ill-informed and stubbornly resistant to logic, rationality, reason, analysis, and objective accumulation of facts. Now, that's what we have here. We have a split down the middle of this country. We've got the center, too few people in the center, and we've got some people on the left who are vociferously into ignorance, misinformation, and such like. And we've got another group on the far right. Maybe they're a bit intolerant sometimes, but at least they have learned an appreciation of the value of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of this country. Now, in between, they play off the idiots, and I call them that, because they don't think too well, who are personal failures or underachievers who anxiously seize upon scapegoat ideas, persons, things, entities, agencies to explain their own lack of success. And the system is actually pretty open to success if you try hard enough and you make a sufficient application of whatever you have inside you. Some people have more problems than others, but no one has any problems that they can't overcome unless there's some sort of physical or mental handicaps that are classically styled abnormalities because they're not normal for humanity. But some unfortunates, just in the roll of the genetic dice or circumstance, they get screwed up. And it's unfortunate. That's why we have charities and we have programs and things that take care of those who aren't normal.
Okay. Well, one more thing, because you know that President Trump was in the UK. I believe he's making his way back. Well, by the time this airs, he'll be back already in America. But he had the States dinner with the King of England, and he had a press conference with the Prime Minister. And one of the questions was about free speech. And I wanted to play that because this is, you know, basically the topic of discussion today.
Despite what we talked about in Scotland a few weeks ago, we still have 12,000 people a year here being arrested for social media posts, for free speech violations. Does that not remain an important area that there is still a lot of disagreement on?
I'd like to have you answer that. And on free speech, that has long lived in this country, free speech. It's one of the founding values of the United Kingdom, and we protect it jealously and fiercely, and always will. And we will bear down on any limits on free speech. I draw a limit between free speech and the speech of those that want to peddle paedophilia and suicide social media to children, and therefore I'm all for free speech. I'm also for protecting children from things that will harm them, paedophiles, those that peddle suicide, which has had a terrible consequence for individual, particularly teenagers. And so that's the balance we strike. But we have had freedom of speech in this country for a very long time, and we will always protect it.
That's disingenuous. We get our concept of free speech from the English, but as it is executed now, it is far from that. You can say things, print things, advocate things in the United States that would get you locked up in England. I say, you know, that's not quite what the official policy is, you know, and we can't have this unity going around disrupting the process of governance. So people in England are locked up all the time and given jail sentences for things that are routinely posted on, say, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, said on YouTube, not Facebook. Facebook is a sham. It's a restricted thing unless you are pushing a certain ideological or philosophical agenda, and then you can say anything you want. That's the way Twitter used to be until Musk took it over, and he still hasn't cleaned up the bureaucracy that is tainting the process, but that's unavoidable, and it's part of the whole thing when it comes to management of large entities. You have a bureaucracy that has been built up over the years, and you may have components of that bureaucracy that are very much disinclined to go along with things like free speech or allowing someone that is viewed as an enemy to have a free say. But that's the way we work. It's part of the collateral damage. You give idiots the opportunity to kill themselves on freeways, so everybody else has the convenience of driving 55, 65, 70, 75 miles an hour.